Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate this Argyle poster in Photoshop. We're first going to create an Argyle pattern, and then we're going to use that pattern to recreate this poster. Now, if you want to follow along, I have included all the assets that I use in a link in the description of this video, so go ahead, download those, and then let's dive into Photoshop. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is create our Argyle pattern. So to do that, I'm going to create a new file. And for this file, I want it to be basically 1 by 2. So whatever the width is, and we're going to do this at 330 pixels, I want the height to be twice that, so 660 pixels. Let's go ahead and leave this at 72, and I'm going to make this Adobe RGB. And let's hit create. Okay, so this is our starting point. And the first thing I want to do is just have a background blue color. So let's go to our foreground color here and put in 152,948. That's going to be our background color. Now if I just go to solid color here, it'll load that as my color. All right, the next thing I want to do is create a shape layer. So here we're going to go to our shape layer tool, make sure this is on shape. I'm going to make the stroke 0, and then for the fill here, I want this to be 485AA8. And let's hit OK. And then I'm going to also set some guides here so that I at least have some center guides. So let's go to view. Why is this not showing up? All right, let's just go on a different tool here. View, guides, new guide layout. And let's make this 2 by 2 and get rid of all the margin. That'll just give me a center guide here. And then if I go back onto my shape tool here and start from the center. Now, if you hold down Option, it's going to do it from the center rather than from a corner. So holding Option or Alt. And then if I hold Shift, it'll keep it a nice perfect square. So it really doesn't matter. You just want a square. It doesn't matter what size it is because we're going to resize it in a second. Okay, so there you go. We now have it made. I'm going to go back onto my normal move tool here, which is V on your keyboard. And then I'm going to do transform, which is Command T. All right, so then if I hover next to the side, I can rotate this. I want to rotate this 45 degrees. Now, if you hold down your shift, this will go in 15-degree increments. Otherwise, you can also just go up here and type in 45. Okay, so now because I need to stretch this and I want my transform box to be square, I'm going to hit the check mark here and then do Command T one more time. That way I have a nice square transform box. And what I can do here is basically hold down Shift and then drag each of these corners to an edge. And now we have our basic first triangle in place here, and we can call this main. And then what I want to do is make a copy of this. So there's a few ways you can do a copy. One is you can just grab the layer in your layers palette and hold down Option. That'll make a copy. You can also do Command J. So now I have two copies. I'm going to call this left edge. What I want to do is take this and drag it until it snaps to this edge. Now, if it's not snapping, go to View, make sure you have Snap turned on, and also make sure you have your Smart Guides turned on. Okay, so now that it's there, let's go back onto our Path Selection tool. And here, I want to take the fill and make it transparent. And then for the stroke, I am going to make a gold color. And for this, we're going to use B79443. Let's hit OK. And I want this stroke to be 3 pixels wide. And that gives us our first stroke. And then actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this copy, just throw it away. And then one more way that you can actually copy a layer is if you have that layer selected here in your canvas with the move tool, if you hold down Option, you'll notice that my little icon changes. That'll allow me to make a copy of this. And I'm going to move that to the right until it snaps. And we're going to call this right edge. And here, if I turn off my guides with Command semicolon, you can see we have the basic structure that we need to create our argyle pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do here is just Command A to select my entire canvas, and then go to Edit, Define Pattern, and we're going to call this Blue Argyle. Okay, next we need to create a yellow argyle. So first I'm just going to deselect. I'm going to do that with Command D on my keyboard. I'm going to take all these layers that make up our blue argyle, put those in a folder with Command G, and then type blue argyle. And then I want to make a copy of this entire folder. Now, if I have the folder selected, Command J still works. It'll make a copy of your entire folder. I'm going to turn off the blue one and change the name of this one to yellow argyle. And here we're basically just going to change some colors around. So here, let's take our color fill, double click on that, and I'm going to change this color to E1B94A. And then with our main selected, let's go to our path tool. Now you'll notice that the shortcut for that tool is A. So rather than going to my tool palette here, I'm just going to hit A on the keyboard. And now you can see I have my options for my shape up here. So I can click here on the fill, and here I can click here, and then I want to make this EAD17E. So that's just a lighter yellow there. And then for the cross hatch, we want to make that an even brighter yellow. So let's select our first left edge here, click on the stroke, click here for the color, and then type in FFE077. And we can go ahead and copy this, hit OK, select our right edge, and then paste that color in here. Okay, so this is our yellow argyle. So let's select all again, go to Edit, Define Pattern, and we'll call this yellow argyle. All right, so now we have our argyle patterns made. We can Command D to deselect. Now what we're going to do is create our basic poster file. So let's go to File, New, and here this is going to be 2000 by 2500 pixels, and we'll keep the rest of the settings the same. Let's hit OK. And for this one, I want a bit of a different guide layout. So let's go to View, Guides, New Guide Layout. And here I want to have 4 columns, 4 rows, and then I do want a margin. I want a top margin of 290 pixels, 0 left margin, 290 bottom, and then 0 right. And let's say clear existing, just so that if there's any guides left over, we clear those and hit OK. Okay, so now we have the basics in place here. The first thing we'll do is just add this pattern to our background. So we're going to go down here and go to Pattern. Now, if we go to our patterns and scroll to the bottom, you should see the new patterns you created. Let's select the blue one. I'm going to change the scale to 49. And then what I want to do is with my pattern here, I want to zoom in to the very middle here and just grab this and line it up to the center there. And then we'll hit OK. All right, the next thing I want to do is create our basic diamond shape in the middle of this. Now I could redo all the steps to create my diamond, meaning the transform and all that, but I already have it in this file. So I'm just going to take this one here, drag it in here. Now I have my shape, and I'm going to do Command T for transform, put this in the middle, and then while holding Option, I'm going to make this bigger. until it fits kind of right in that space there. And if we zoom in here, again, holding Option, we can just make sure we're covering right to where that dark blue diamond shape is. All right, let's do Command O to zoom, and that looks good. Now what I want to do is make a second copy of this. So we're going to call this frame, because this is where we're going to put our artwork in. And then I want to create a second one. Well, actually, let's call this background, because the other one I want to create is the actual frame. So for the frame, I'm going to make a copy with Command J. I'm going to make the fill transparent and then make the stroke a darker gold color. So for the darker gold color, we're going to use C99139. So kind of an orangey color. And we're going to make this 24 pixels wide. Now, because I cannot control where this stroke lands, whether it's inside or outside of the path, it always goes in the middle. What I need to do is make this about 12 pixels smaller. So I'm going to do Command T for transform. Make sure I hold the Option so it's scaling from the center. And then I'm going to move this to there. And then, so that's 98 degrees. And then we'll hit the check mark. And let's call this one frame. And for the frame, I want to add a little bit of a effect to it. So here, what we're going to do is go to our bevel and emboss. And for our settings here, I want to do, let's reset to default first. I want it to be an inner bevel smooth. I want this to be quite high. So let's say 710. For the size, we're going to do 4 pixels. And then here we're going to do 80. I'm going to turn off global light just so I'm not affecting anything else. Make this 80, this 53. For our gloss contour, we're going to use this one that bounces up in the middle. And then here I want this to be linear dodge at 100. And then I want this to basically be kind of a darker brownish color. So something probably around here. And then I want this to be 66. And that looks good. I also want this to have a drop shadow. So I'm going to go down here to drop shadow. Let's go ahead and reset that to default as well. I'll make it a little bit bigger and probably around 70. Let's hit OK. All right, now let's go back to our background here. And what I want to do here is basically take this pattern and we can change the name of it to blue argyle. I'm going to make a copy of that, and I'm going to do the Option and drag trick. And then here I want this to be clipped to our background. So to do that, I'm going to hold down Option. And if I hover between the two layers, I can clip this so that this layer is only affecting our background. And then if I double click here, I'm going to change this to our yellow pattern. So now you can see the inside of this just has our yellow pattern. I also want some drop shadows in here invading into our frame. So to do that, I'm just going to select my background and go to Inner Shadow. For this, I'm going to reset to default, change my opacity to 100, change my distance to 0, and then increase this. And I'm kind of going to do a few of these. So we'll start at 250. Make another copy and pull this back to around 150. And then we'll make one more copy, pull this into about 75. And then finally one more copy. This one I'm going to leave at 250, but I'm going to change the blend mode to color burn and then take it down to, let's say, 30. I also don't want it to be above these other ones, so I can move it down by just doing this. That way it's mostly just affecting my background color. I can also increase it now to probably around 60. I think that looks good. Let's hit OK. All right, next we need to pull in our model. So for this, I'm going to go to File, Open, and in the Assets folder, you're going to see this model photo DNG. This is a photo I took of my younger brother. And There's already some settings in here to make him brighter and so forth. If you look under light, you can see there's already some controls here. I'm pretty much going to leave those as is and just hit the open. All right, so now we have our file open. The next thing we need to do is cut him out of the background. To do that, I can go to our object selection tool and just make a square around him. And I'm noticing that it missed some of the hair. Let's see if we use our cloud detailed results and hit select subject, if that gives us a slightly better result on the hair there. And yes, it did. All right, great. So now I can add a mask to this, and let's go ahead and right mouse click and convert this to a smart object. And let's call this model. Okay, so now that we have our model, let's just drag this here. And then what I can do is take our model and drag him into this document. I say yes. And he's arrived under our blue argyle. So let's move him up. And then let's do a Command T for transform. I want to make him quite a bit smaller. I do want him resting on the bottom. And then if we just drag this down, I want his eye to be about in this center right there. So if we put his eye, maybe not quite center, I kind of want his head centered, but you can use this eye here as kind of a good gauge as to where it should be. And then let's hit that check mark. Now, as I'm zooming in here, I'm seeing we don't have the greatest edge on his hair. I think we could do better than that. Let's go ahead and double click. This is the beauty of having a smart object, is that you can always go back and make some corrections. So here what I want to do is go into my select and mask workspace. If I double click on my mask, I can go here in my properties and open up the select and mask workspace. What I want to do here is use the edge refine tool along this edge of his hair. Let's see if this improves it. I'm going to increase the opacity here of my overlay just so that I can see a little bit better how my edge is looking. Nope. Okay, well that's certainly improved. Let's hit OK. And that will apply those changes to your mask. Let's go ahead and close this and save, and then this will update in our main document. That looks better. All right, let's Command 0 to fit everything in our canvas, and let's do Command semicolon so we can look at what this looks like without our guides turned on. So I like this so far. There are a few things I want to do to make him look more postery. Let's go ahead and do that inside of our smart object. So here I basically want to add a little bit of cyan blue color to his jacket and a little more skin tones to his skin tones, maybe sharpen up his face features, and then add some blue to the eyes. So let's go ahead and do the recoloring first. So for this, what I'll do is just do kind of a rough selection here around his head area. And then if I go to my quick selection tool and hold down Option. Now you'll notice if I hold down Option, my tool changes from adding to my selection to subtracting from my selection. So in this case, I want to subtract, and I want to subtract this shirt here. Just like that. There you go. So now my selection just selects his face. I'm not worried about it selecting outside because I'm going to clip my curve so that it only applies to him. So let's go here, add a curve layer, and then we'll clip this here so that it's only applying to him, not the background. Here, I'm going to go to my greens, add a little bit of magenta there, go to my blues, add a tiny bit of yellow, and maybe lighten up the highlights just a tiny bit. And then maybe in my RGB, give it just a tiny bit more light. And let's turn the eyeball on and off. That's good. It just gives it a little bit more skin tone. Now what I can do is invert this mask. So what I'm going to do is just hold down Option, drag this up so that I have a second copy, clip this one, reset it, go to my mask properties and invert it. So now this is just applying to his clothes. And what I want to do is give the clothes a little bit of a blue look. So to do that, I'm going to go to red because the opposite of red is cyan. I'm going to add a little bit of cyan there. And then go to my blues and bring that up just a bit. I like that. That looks pretty good. All right, then I need to make his eyes a little more blue. So here, let's zoom in to his eyes. We're going to add a new layer, and we can call this eye color. And let's go ahead and use the color that we already have, which is this blue color that we used for the background. Let's just make it a little bit lighter. And I'm just doing that by dragging this up. I hit OK, go to my brush tool, right mouse click, make sure I'm using a soft round pressure brush. And here we can increase the flow to maybe 50. And to interactively increase your flow, similar to how you can adjust the brush by hitting numbers on your keyboard, like 5 for 50%, 0 for 100. If you add shift to that, you'll be adjusting your flow. So let's set that to 50%. And then let's go make our brush smaller. And I'm doing this by holding down Command and Option and dragging left and right. And then I just want to draw kind of a blue around here. And then let's put this on soft light. And I add one more layer, and we're going to call this eye lights. And here I'm going to put this on overlay. I'm going to change my brush to white. And then I want to change my flow to just 10%, so Shift 1. And then just at the bottom here, I want to add some lightness. And then I can also just hit the catch lights in the eye, make those a little bit lighter. Most posters have a really strong catch light in the eye. And that's looking pretty nice. The other thing I want to do is maybe just clean up a few of these spots on his skin. So let's go on the layer that he's on, and let's just go on to our spot healing brush and just hit a few of these skin spots. Not going to go overkill because I mainly wanted to show you how to create that argyle pattern in this tutorial, but we might as well finish this, create the whole poster, right? And let's make sure there's no obvious spots on the jacket. I don't see anything. I think that looks pretty darn good. Maybe this hair right here. And maybe just a few more spots right there. Okay, and then the other thing I do want to do is add a little bit of sharpness to the whole thing. I'm going to hold down Option, take my layer and just drag this to the top. I'm going to delete the layer mask and then go up to Filter, Other, High Pass. And here I want to give this maybe 2 pixels or maybe 2.5 actually, and then hit OK. Now we're going to change this to linear light, and you can see what that's doing. It's I'm going to clip this actually to our layer, and you can see if I turn it on and off, it's adding quite a bit of sharpness to the whole image. Now it's a little too much on the jacket, which already has this pretty obnoxious pattern on it. So what I can do is add a mask to this, and then I'm going to go to my gradient tool, change it to black. Make sure you're on classic gradient, not gradient, and then linear, and then we can just drag up, kind of erase it from the jacket there. And then I think also we don't need it quite this strong, so let's go to our fill and maybe pull it down to 70%. All right, let's close this, hit save. And this will update in our main poster file. Looks good, looks good. All right, next thing we're gonna do is add some gradients across the whole image. So let's go ahead and take all these and we're gonna put these in a folder called artwork. And right at the top of all this, we're gonna add a layer called shadows. And here, I'm gonna go back onto my gradient tool, default my colors to black and white, which is this little icon here, or hitting D on your keyboard. And then if we drag from the top to about the middle of his forehead, and then from the bottom to about, I would say somewhere around here. That looks pretty good. And then I'm also going to kind of go off screen here or off canvas and drag in kind of on all four corners. Just a little bit of a diagonal curve there. So something like that. I also want to add one more gradient here, and we're going to call this jacket gradient. And I'm going to clip this here and then just drag kind of up here. So just toward the bottom there, we're adding a little more gradient. All right, so now we have the artwork pretty much done. There's two small things I want to do. One is above my blue argyle. I want to take a elliptical marquee and kind of starting from the center, and I can turn on my guides here if I want. From the center here, I want to make a circle that kind of goes in the light area. So something like this. Let's go ahead and turn those guides back off, Command semicolon. And then let's add a curve. And what I want to do here is I basically just want to pull my white point up a bit so we get this kind of lighter area in the center. So something like this. Now, it's got this hard line, which I don't want, but I can go to the mask properties and just add like a 500 radius there. That'll just soften it out. So I'm liking that. The other thing I want to do before we call it quits on the artwork is just add some grain across the whole thing. If we zoom in here, this is just way too clean for a poster look. So let's go to the very top of our layer stack. There's a lot of ways that you can add film grain. One of my favorite, however, is using the camera raw noise generator. So to do that, I'm going to go and just add a new layer. We can call this noise. I want to fill this layer with a gray. So if we go here, your B represents brightness. We want that to be 50, and we want the hue and saturation to be 0. Let's hit OK, and then we're going to fill in our noise layer with this color. So Option, Delete. And then I'm going to convert this to a smart object. And the reason I'm converting it is so if I make a noise with my camera raw and want to go back and make any adjustments to it, I can. So let's go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And we're going to go to the effects here and go to Grain. I want to increase this grain. And the thing I really like about this grain is the roughness control. So generally, if you're using just the noise filter in Photoshop, you'll get an effect very similar to this. But with roughness, I can reduce this and get something that looks much more like a realistic film grain. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's hit OK. And here we're going to do our linear light again. This is way, way, way too strong. But what I can do is take my fill down to something really light, like maybe 20 at most. Probably even 10 is fine. You can see that's just giving a nice noise pattern across our whole image there. Kind of liking that. The one other thing I do see we probably need is a drop shadow on our background. So let's go ahead and add that. Drop shadow there. I'm going to reset this to default and then increase my size quite a bit to something around 120 looks good. Let's make our distance 0 and then hit OK. All right, so now I'm happy with the artwork. The last thing we'll do is just add some titles to this. So let's go ahead and turn off our artwork. And I'm going to click here just so I'm not selecting the artwork, and then hit this. That'll create a new layer. Actually, I don't need to create the new layer because with my text tool, it'll automatically create a text layer. Let's turn on the guides again, go onto my text layer. I'm going to select the font called Sweet Gothic. And we're going to use Sweet Gothic Medium, and this is going to be for the tagline here. So let's select kind of a gold color. We're going to do FC14E. And then up here, I'm going to click and then type in the greater, the spy, comma, the bigger, the lie. Okay, then let's select all here. And if we do Command T when we're on the text tool, it does not give you transform. It pops up your character palette. And that's what I want here. We're going to change this to 91. We're going to make this 99. And we're going to make this minus 60. And let's hit the check mark here. And then if I go onto my move tool, I'm going to drag this up, make sure it's snapped to the center, and the baseline should be on this guide right there. Next, let's hold down Option and just drag this layer down here, and we're going to select this text and change this to In Theaters, February 2. And for this text down here, we're going to change the font size. So again, Command T to bring up my text. Change this to 50, and the rest of the settings we can leave as is. And then let's just drag this down. Kind of want it about there. All right, then the last thing is we want to do the Argylle text. And for this, we're going to use a font called Red Glass, and I have included a link in the assets where you can find that font. So let's do Option. We'll drag this up just to make a new text layer there. Go onto our text, select all. I'm going to change this to Red Glass. And I'm going to change my font size here to quite large. We're going to do 273. And then Command T again to bring up the rest of my character here. I want this to be minus 40. And then we're going to just type in ARGYLLE. And one other thing here, let's go ahead and drag this. And I want this to basically snap in the center here and be centered in this guide, or where this guide is here. So that looks quite good where it is. Next, I'm going to go to my layer styles. And here I'm using one of my Nucly titling styles. If you don't have these, I will include a link in the description where you can get them. And I'll also include the one I use here inside the assets. But I'm going to use this one right here. Let's go ahead and turn that on. And I'm just going to turn off these gradients. If we zoom in here, we can see some of these grunge effects are just too strong. So let's go open up our bevel and emboss. And this texture in the bevel is coming from our texture here. I'm just going to change the depth of it to -10 rather than -50. And then I'm also going to go to the pattern overlay, which is where we're getting these scratch effects, and change this to maybe 10. And let's hit OK. And that looks really good. The other thing I want to do is take these little triangles, and if you look at the original poster, you'll see they have them in a few places. So to do that, I will just go to my shape tool, go down here and make a small shape. I'm going to rotate this so that it's 45 degrees and then do a transform. And I'm going to unlock the transform here and make the width 50%. This is not quite 50. I want it to match this one here. So let's go right in here and just manually make this match. And that looks pretty good. All right, and then we're going to put this right here, kind of between the L and the E. And what I can do is take all these effects that are on the Argylle, and if I hold down Option and Command and drag these, it'll just copy them to this item here. I'm going to hold down Option, put another one right here, another one inside the G, and then the last one between the A and the R. And let's do Command 0, Command semicolon. So there you have it. That's how you recreate that poster in Photoshop. And hopefully through the course of this, you've learned some tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use in your own projects. And if you are interested in getting my full set of layer styles, one of which we used in this project, I've included a link to that below. Also, if you want to learn Photoshop through projects, as we've done here, but learn the full power of the program, the AI tools, all the other tools, color adjustments, and so forth, check out Nucly.com. I sell professional training and tools for Photoshop compositing, so check that out. Otherwise, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, leave a comment. I'm also interested if there's other posters that you'd like to know how to recreate in Photoshop. I do have a whole playlist on my channel about recreating movie posters, so you can leave a comment about that. Otherwise, here's some other tutorials that you can check out, and I'll see you next time.